Morning all. Let's have a look at Vishy Anand's encounter against Viktor Korchnoi, played in the Monaco tournament of 1994. E4 from Vishy, and Viktor played the Caro-Kann after d4, d5, knight c3, taking, and bishop f5, the most popular system in the Caro-Kann, the main line. Knight g3, bishop g6, knight f3 was played here, knight f6 now was played here. Not too concerned actually about knight e5. Usually black does still play knight d7, but this is playable as well, knight f6. White actually chose h4 first, threatening h5, and trying to just win the light square bishop. Black reacts to that. Knight e5, and the bishop drops back. And now a little bit of a surprise move. Usually bishop d3 is played here, followed by the second most popular bishop c4. Vishy chose actually c3, and it's got some interesting ideas behind it. Let's put on a Qb3 here. So c3 makes d4, pardon me, get rid of that. C3 makes d4 more solid, but it also means the queen can come out. After e6, in fact, queen b3 is played, and it looks as though, well, the bishop over there has neglected b7, so there's some logic to this system. There's a little bit of pressure, but after queen b6, isn't black just equalising if he's able to get the queens off? Knight e2 is now played. Black doesn't want to immediately take here. This is pressure along the a file. Viktor plays knight d5, and we see this challenge of knight f4. Now, a very interesting move. Let's see what Viktor actually played. Knight d7. He forfeited his castling rights with this move. But let's see, bishop e7. I think this might be okay. Let's play as well. I don't think there's too much going on here in this position. Bishop d3 supported by the knight on e5. And white's a tiny bit better. It's nothing. It's no big deal, it seems. But knight d7. Actually, this is also, from an engine perspective, perfectly playable. It doesn't matter about black forfeiting the castling rights. In fact, I really suggest black's doing even quite well here. Slight advantage to black, tiny advantage to black. If anyone's got a tiny advantage, it's black. The bishops seem quite good. Black seems fairly solid here. Vishy plays knight d3, and it looks as though knight e5 is a little bit of a nuisance. Possibly this is a slight overreaction now. Possibly just king c7 was okay. If bishop, well, the bishop f4 is covered by the knight on d5. It looks perfectly nice for black. In fact, this position here, but maybe a bit of an overreaction. Bishop takes d3. The engine evaluations shift in white's favour after this, giving up this light square bishop. So possibly a little bit of an inaccuracy technically. After bishop takes d3, now Viktor simplified with queen takes b3, taking the queens off, and bishop d6. So the idea seems to be to reinforce black's control of the f4 square. White plays g3, marking the f4 square now, and we see h5. So black seems to have a fairly comfortable and solid position, maybe aiming for a draw with black, which is not a bad thing at all. b4 clamping down on c5, but also introduces b5 as a potential threat to dissolve the double pawns, and Viktor reacts to that with a6. And we see now king d1. The king is keen to go to c2 here. After g6, king c2, rook h e8. So nothing much going on at all at the moment, but white does have the bishop here, a slight advantage to white. Bishop d2, rook a c8, and now rook h e1. And if white's left to maneuver, well, there's a few things white can do to try and improve the position, but it doesn't seem as though anything major is going on. Maybe this is slightly provocative of Viktor Korchnoi. Given that white has the bishop pair, maybe this is slightly dubious. e5 slightly opens up the position more. After d takes, rook takes. Well, the idea for black to exchange off a pair of rooks and have a draw maybe. Rook takes e5, bishop takes e5, rook d1 again. It doesn't seem as though after rook d1, it doesn't seem as though anything much is happening. Okay, the rook stares at the king here. Is that a big deal? King moves to c7. But king c7 might actually be a slight inaccuracy. The engine suggests that actually it might be worth clamping down on white's c4 here, which would kick the knight. You'd think, doesn't c4 just block in this bishop though? b5, if b5 was played, I think, okay, it's a small advantage for white. White has the bishop pair, say bishop g5, king c7, but without c4 as a forcing move, there doesn't seem to be anything much going on here at all. If rook a1, just king b7 say, it doesn't seem such a big deal. But with this move king c7, somehow white now is increasing the advantage slightly after c4. In fact, black now needs to play accurately after this forcing move here. There's two moves for black which are reasonably okay to try and hold the balance. Knight b6 or knight f6. On knight b6, let's say knight b6, let's say rook e1 hitting the bishop. Now if bishop f6, that controls the e7 entry point, and white's advantage, I'm not entirely sure it's decisive here, but bishop f1, it's uncomfortable for black, controlling that e file, possessing that e file, and with bishop f4 check on the cards, it's uncomfortable for black's king as well, and bishop h3 as well. These are uncomfortable bishops to face here. The position is slightly open. You can see how the quality of the bishops has been exaggerated by black, opening up a bit with e5. The bishops are finding these useful diagonals here. So this is uncomfortable, but it seems from an engine point of view, knight d7 here might actually be okay, a lesser evil choice. Say c5, rook g8 is useful as a prophylaxis move against bishop g5 here, to be able to play f6 without loosening g6 fatally. And here, for example, black again might actually be okay against the bishop pair, although the bishop pairs, they're quite a nuisance. They can be quite a nuisance. And you know, this variation shows it's actually quite scary. Actually, so maybe, you know, this is potentially winning for white. It's actually quite dangerous, even in this variation with knight b6. That white, these bishops just seem to be quite dangerous. But in the game, actually, knight e7 was played, and that is not as accurate here. After rook e1, it seems as though bishop f6 is reasonable, but now, can you see the move that Viswanathan Anand played here, which increases white's advantage? A simple positional move. I'll give you 10 seconds starting from now, or you might want to pause the video. Okay, just bishop c3. Yeah, this knight is loose here on e7. It's difficult to see what black can do here. If knight g8, protecting the bishop, then white can just take here and penetrate on e7, snagging a pawn. And this is not very pleasant at all, because then this goes. It's not very pleasant at all. So Viktor Korchnoi chose instead bishop takes c3, which allows rook takes e7 check, and now white takes a pawn up, and protecting, importantly, the b pawn. The engine suggests bishop e1. Another idea, though, of attacking f2 was bishop d4. So f2 trying to get onto this pawn chain. But now Vichy plays c5 check, and the king safety element of the position is being emphasized here. After king e5, rook takes f7, wins another pawn and protects the f pawn. And here Viktor actually resigned. Black's king is in mortal danger in some of the variations here, as well as this pawn now loose. So yeah, these two pawns are vulnerable to the light square bishop. Just to demonstrate, if rook b8, f4 check, rook d7 is winning actually the bishop on d4. After king e6, we just take the bishop on d4. So that's pretty bad. So after bishop d4, yeah, rook takes f7 now on move 32. Yeah, it looks as though it's a terrible position. What else? If rook d8, bishop takes g6, I mean it's very strong here. Just collecting pawns, it's just very dangerous. Just taking this one, and Black's king is still vulnerable. Okay, it's not the most fireworks display game I've ever shown you. I think Viktor just made the bishop pair a bit worse when he played this e5. I think he could have perhaps kept the position just slight advantage for white, but it seems after e5 and this available forcing move later, so this made Black's position slightly more vulnerable, but this forcing move I think needs to be clamped down on with b5. It looks quite committal to play b5, but without a manoeuvring knight to c5 or a5, I think it represents a lesser evil choice to play b5 to clamp down on c4 here. So that wasn't really played, and this did lead to big trouble, it seems. Even with this simplified position after king c7, this seems to be heading for big trouble with the bishop pair, etc. But this didn't help knight e7. This another forcing move is pretty strong here. On bishop d6 there was c5, by the way, for e7. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this game. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.